Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is that time of week again. It's Record Live. And Jared, it's great to be back, just the two of us today, to have a bit of a chat. How are you going? What's the haps?
We are back. Oh, how am I going? That's a loaded question. Working from home with a 16-month-old is a challenge. Let's just well, working from home in a home where you don't have your own like home office or study or nook or man cave that you can get away to and do your thing, in a 2-bedroom apartment where the only sort of shared living space is like full of everyone all day. That's sort of a challenge. So it's been fun, but we're getting there.
Yeah, for sure. You just mentioned that you were just chatting to 6 people at once because you manage, well, how many people do you manage actually? You manage a few. And to be able to do that and juggle a toddler, and yeah, hats off to you, my friend.
Well,
don't know how you do it.
Thankfully, my wife is only working part-time at the moment, which gives her the opportunity to help in that space. And, I really am grateful for that. Generally, when lockdowns aren't happening, we have some family, some of my in-laws around, or my daughter goes over there so even if I have to work at home, it's a lot easier on my wife because she's been working at home since the pandemic started pretty much. So yeah, hats off to a lot of people who make it possible. I've had to juggle with my wife, given no babysitters. We've both had to take the duty of care different times of different days so that we can both get work done. Because she needs entertaining, she needs feeding, she needs nappy changes, and she needs all this. So we've got to juggle it. But yeah, it's by no means all on me to juggle all that. My wife is a trooper helping in that regard. So
yeah,
very, very grateful for that. I know not everyone would be in that sort of position. So,
well, it's interesting how lockdowns shake up because like for me, my experience is the total opposite of that. I'm just like at home in an empty house, like twiddling my thumbs, trying not to get too lonely kind of thing. But for you, it's like chaos. For other, it like just goes to both ends of the spectrum when you're just stuck at home all the time and you don't have options, which is tricky. So I think about half of the Australian population at the moment are in some form of lockdown or another, which is pretty crazy as of today. I'm not sure how many throughout the South Pacific in total, but yeah, it's not looking great at the moment. It's a bit gnarly, but anyway, yeah, I guess.
But Melon, lockdown is dragging us online more. As you said, I was chatting with a bunch of different people, and that was over Teams or Zoom. It's often the way of connecting, or here on Facebook Live, we're able to connect still with our audience, which is a blessing. But it's also, segues into our topic today. So that's what I was thinking. But sounds like you were heading in the same direction.
I was. You beat me to the smooth segue there. Today we wanted to talk about social media, and I'm actually surprised. I don't remember talking about this specifically before. It comes up all the time because it's a very integral part of our lives. We use it all the time. But on the weekend, Jared and I had the privilege of being able to present a few workshops in Fiji, obviously via Zoom again. Fantastic technology. And it was all on the topic of social media and digital ministry and sort of how we use those tools in that space. And we wanted to maybe step back and have a bit more of a meta discussion about all that, because that was very like in-depth, font choice, picking colors, picking platforms. If that is something that you guys are interested in, we're happy to do that. Just let us know in the comments. But today we wanted to take more of maybe an overarching perspective. We'll see where the conversation goes. But we use social media a lot at work. And we also, I guess there's different facets of social media. There's more like the official record social media. And then there's obviously, we have individual social medias. Jared, how much would you say you use social media? How many hours per day would you be using it for, I guess, work and or personal use?
I just, before we go there, Mary Ellen, I'd like to say Bula Vanaka to our friends in Fiji, if they're watching. That was a lot of fun on the weekend. Not as much fun as being there in person to be able to be with them, but it was really nice to spend time with the Student Association of Fiji and the Adventist students there, and just chat about some of this stuff. In terms of my hours a day, I guess it depends on work as well. My phone always tells me how much I use my phone every day.
Yeah.
And that sometimes, some weeks it's like, oh, your phone usage has gone down. And I'm like, wow, look at me. I'm doing well, you know.
Yeah.
And some weeks, depending on what's going on, lockdowns and different things, it goes off. And I'm like, oh, no. There are two main things that bring me back to my phone that I waste a lot of time on my phone each week. I'm learning French on an app called Duolingo. So I have to do my lessons every day, have to get my reps in and try and teach myself French. And the other one is my Bible app. I've got quite a streak, almost 100 days this year, or the last 100 days of reading. I'm trying to read through the Bible in a year, which is
amazing.
I don't know if I've done it before. I've read through the Bible for sure. And I've tried to do it in a year, but I'm actually doing a plan which leads me through, and I should get it finished less than a year. So that's got a social aspect to it too, the Bible app. You can actually see what other people are commenting on verses and that sort of thing. But I try and get that done every day. That's my recommended or my necessary thing. But I do spend a lot of times. What's getting me lately is the reels on Instagram. You can just watch like little videos for ages, and you don't realize the time's going by, and you're watching these silly videos, and it can go by really quickly, waste a lot of time. So probably a couple of hours a day, I'd say. And then with the work stuff, maybe I don't spend a lot of time on social for work, although I check it from time to time. I have to quickly check the comments, if people are commenting, if there's things that are happening. Thankfully, I've got other people in my team who really help fly the flag on social media, so I don't have to spend as much time during work doing it. Yeah, but it's very simple to be very distracted by social media and jump on it, you know, all the time. I don't know about you, Mary Ellen, but if you're waiting for a bus, or you're at the doctor's surgery, or you just have time to kill, you almost get an overwhelming urge to look at your phone and to check social media. Every time there's downtime, there's no boredom or anything anymore. It's just this attraction that, I pick up the phone and look at it. So I'm not sure that's healthy, but yeah, I don't know if other people relate to that feeling.
I think everyone, actually let us know in the comments if you do relate to that feeling. I know I relate to that feeling. And I think most people who, regularly use their smartphone or, carry it with them most of the time will have that feeling. Earlier this year, I think maybe March or so, I did a 30-day social media fast, and I really struggled with it. And one of the overwhelming feelings was that reflex, like, oh, I'm in cold, I'm waiting in line, or, I just want to scroll while I don't have any other, stimulus. But I found that really difficult because as someone who does manage social media platforms as part of their job, I couldn't not do that for work. So it was this constant battle between like, oh, that's right, I'm not supposed to be on social media now, but hang on, it's okay at the moment that I can't check my personal page, but I can use the record page and all that stuff. But yeah, I would say that, because I just looked at my own social media usage, and on average, this is really bad. On average this week, I have used Instagram for 3.5 hours per day.
A day.
And I'm not sure if that's a lot of time. I think lockdown has made that a lot worse, because my average usage has pretty much doubled since we've been locked down. But I'm quite ashamed of that.
Doesn't help.
Help. No.
In the comments, I noticed Kelly has made a good point. She says, otherwise we might be just reading a book or the newspaper or something, and we'd just be getting our news from other sources. So yeah,
so
partly that. But I think I read recently, Nathan Brown's done a piece for Record that's coming up about how he mentions the fact that some schools are encouraging children off the iPads and the laptop because it became a thing. Everyone's got an iPad, everyone's got a laptop. But all the notifications and the distractions and the learning on those screens is not actually, our brains doesn't take it in quite the same way as it does on paper. So books, literature, magazines, you know, Record and Signs. And so it's like, how do we measure that? It's hard to know whether we're getting that information in quite as well as we would if we didn't do it on a screen. It's more passive consumption. So good point, Kelly.
Yeah, definitely. I guess this point came up in, or not the one you just mentioned, sorry, I'm about to mention one. While we were doing our presentations on Sabbath, some very good comments and questions were made. And one of them was about this balance between social media addiction and then using the platforms for good. Because like everything, whether it's books, whether it's exercise, like anything you do in life can be used for good, or it can be used obsessively, and that can become a negative thing, right? And so with social media, it's like the most poignant example of just going overboard. But like for me personally, on my own social media platform, I try to use that as a bit of a space to share my faith and, you know, share some things I've been thinking of and some creative stuff. And I try and use that as like a non-threatening, I guess, ministry platform, because it's just like pretty pictures and like a blurb. But then it's just this really fine line between posting and obsession, because you get on the app and then you're like, oh, okay. But I guess as Christians, you know, navigating that is a real challenge and something that we need to get better at. Because, for example, in Sabbath school, when I'm chatting with my friends, people of a similar age to me, most people, I would say 99% of people say that I don't find the Bible as enjoyable anymore because I can get Bible verses on social media, or I can consume a video, or I just don't have the interest because it's boring and social media is more interesting. So I don't know, have you struggled with that, Jared? Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's two different conversations we could have here. One is, you know, statistics showing that social media or usage or just smartphone and screen time is changing the way our brains work, the physiology of our brains. And so that makes it harder to concentrate for longer periods of time. You know, kids are like instinctive in the way that they watch you do it. And then, you know, Lena has said she's seen our daughter, she'll be watching something on an iPad or something, and if a notification comes up, she'll swipe it away because it's like she wants to get rid of it so she can see the video. You know, and it's maybe not even a conscious, like, this is what has to happen and this will be the result. It's just happening, you know. There's a generation of digital natives being produced who are going to have, we don't yet know what the brain will look like because of so much screen time. We actually don't, we haven't seen that, I think, for long enough. If you think about it, sort of smartphones are only sort of 10 years old. You know, some of the social media apps are only maybe 10, maybe 15, you know, once things were getting started. But once they became universal is only sort of fairly recently. So we just still don't know the long-term effects of that. And it's the other thing though is, can we use it for good? And I think we can make connections, we can build relationships, we can minister to people. And we've seen during the churches being shut that without online presence, we could very easily lose connection with our church community, with our church family. So I think there's two sort of questions to be addressed. And I think it's very easy to throw out the baby with the bathwater and say, no, it's terrible. We shouldn't do it because it distracts me or it does whatever, but without looking at some of the positive things that come from it.
Yeah. A common, actually, before I say that, I wanted to bring up, while you were speaking about children and being able to use iPads so easily, so well, I read a while ago, I don't remember where I read it, but I'm hoping it's true. Well, I'm not hoping it's true. Anyway, they did a study and they looked at children in like kindergarten. I think it was in America, like the first year of school. And they gave the children like tasks. I think they had to like roll a ball of plasticine. And they found that like 50% plus of the children didn't know how to get like a piece of plasticine into like a ball because they hadn't developed those dexterous skills because they're always tapping a screen, which I thought was horrifying, but also like, yeah, interesting. Because you're right, it's only been around for 10 years, but the amount of effect that it's had in that time is astounding. One of the misconceptions I often, lies, I guess. I was just putting together a graphic for Instagram, which will appear soon. But some lies that often I hear Christians, or misconceptions I hear Christians saying about social media. And one of them is that social media is addictive and will take up time I should be spending with God, so I shouldn't use it altogether. Now, you kind of mentioned going cold turkey a second ago. Do you agree with that, or do you think that Christians should be on social media? Is it more important to be on social media because everyone is on it nowadays and it's just where ministry is?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's important it's helpful to have a social media fast. I'm a sort of all or nothing guy. So sometimes on Sabbath, I called it the pineapple of power. We've got this carved pineapple bowl. And I was like, all right, everybody, put your phones in the pineapple. And I'm not going to touch my phone for the Sabbath, just to have that release, that break, that rest. And I found that helpful. I found it good, but it's not necessarily something that I'd recommend every day of the week, because again, like for us, we use it for work. So when I say, I'm going cold turkey off the apps, it means I can't actually effectively do what I need to do. Yeah. And so that's a downside. So I think, look, cold turkey isn't necessarily the way to go. I'd say if you don't have certain apps or don't have Facebook at all, don't get into it if you don't want it. You should have the freedom to do that. You shouldn't feel pressured to do what everyone else is doing just because they're doing it. On the flip side, I'd say that, especially if you're a younger person in today's day and age, if that's where the people are hanging out, Jesus went to where the people were. He was at wells in the marketplace. He was in parties where people were attending, gatherings and stuff, and people were following him around, and he was going to where people were at. So I think if people are all on social media, that it represents a really good opportunity for the church to connect with people in those spaces, in those marketplaces. Today's marketplaces. Yeah,
it's also a bit of a double-edged sword as well, though, because I completely agree. I think there's just so many voices on social media. There's just so much stimulus that we need to be in that space, because most of social media is just garbage, like negative stuff, people arguing or self-obsessed people, or just stuff that's completely unattainable because it's all a highlight reel. So it's, I think personally, a real place where the devil can put negative thoughts in your mind and get you in a real problematic headspace. So injecting any kind of hope or any uplifting material into that is great. But at the same time, so much Christian content is just not as engaging or up to scratch, I guess, with like the current trends. So often, and this happens time and time again with Christianity and like church institutions. And this is not attacking the church. This is just kind of saying how it is. A lot of the time, we're sort of, a year behind the trends, and we're like trying to play catch up. And so Kelly's comment here, she says, a phone is human connection, like texting family members, emergency or not, etc. A phone is human connection. I like that. And I think sometimes what the problem is when Christians or the church injects themselves into that social media space, all we do is just make content and leave it there. It's just like, a pretty Instagram reel or like a few videos, and we don't ever follow up on the connections. And I think the real trick is remembering that social media is actually inherently a social platform. It's not just a platform to put stuff up and hope that it gets likes. You know, we have to engage and try and get people from being likes to being friends, or to being from followers to being Christ followers. And that's really where the rubber hits the road, because otherwise, I don't know, it's not irrelevant, but it can be difficult to actually make a difference in those spaces.
Yeah, I'm reminded of what Jesus did, because he would take time for himself and he would recharge and he would connect with his Father, you know, and he'd take the Holy Spirit into whatever spaces and places that he was going. And what you were saying then, as you started that sort of part of that answering that question, was we need to be in those spaces, because we need to bring the hope and the love and the connection into those spaces. But it can be a draining and we can be swayed if that's all the place we ever are. You know, we go with the common popular theology on Twitter, or we start to be influenced by people who have deconstructed their religion. Stephen Meyer has just commented, the danger is being in an echo chamber and not listening to any other opinions. That can happen in social media because the algorithms send that stuff in your space. And so, yes, we need to be there. We need to be a positive place in that space, but we need to be taking in the Spirit with us. It needs to be like, we have our time, we recharge, we read good theologians, we listen to, valuable content. We read our Bibles for ourselves and we understand what it is we believe and what we want to share. And then we wade into social media with that Spirit with us, rather than trying to do it on our own and just being washed around by the trends or the tides of social media. You know, it's very easy to be distracted, but it's also very easy to be influenced in spaces like that. Unless we take God with us into those spaces, unless we do the hard work outside or have some disconnect time where we're working on ourselves and our own understanding of God and our own connections to God and to Christianity, we can then take those things into that space with us. We can't do it on our own. If we're disconnected, we'll just be swayed by whatever trend or whatever group of people we find out there.
Yeah, that's difficult. I know I personally have, like, I wouldn't say I'm gullible, but I can very easily be swayed one way or the other based on like a conversation, like, oh, who should I agree with, you know? So I'm not a very obstinate person. I'm not that stubborn. So I personally,
you've told us before you're a people pleaser, Mariella. I think that comes with the people pleasing, just going with the flow. We're all like that sometimes. We can be.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess everyone to an extent can be, for sure. But yeah, what I was going to say is social media is such a fast-paced space. And I think the way of Jesus, the way of when he was on earth, he was very slow. He was never in a hurry. And I think that's what we're called to as Christians, to be a bit more, just like meditate on the word and take time with God and not worry about this like rat race, fast-paced content creation stuff. However, the reality is that social media is like an instantaneous, fast-paced, get as much content as you can out into the world as quickly as possible. And so with what you're saying about, bad theology or just taking someone else's comment and riffing off that, a lot of the time I'm really tempted to just copy someone else's post, make it my own, and then put that out, because that takes me like 10 minutes. But to read a whole book of the Bible and summarize that, or to read a book by a theologian, could take me weeks. And then, it's kind of this question of, will the content even be that good? So you're totally right. There's like, I guess, echo chambers, as Stephen said, of people that are just copying each other's ideas in circles, because it's quick and you can get likes and you can get traction and you can be popular. So I think in these spaces, we just have to check that our motivations are right. Are we in it to get likes, or are we in it to actually share good ideas, I guess?
I think one thing that Christians should be wary of. One thing that's very dangerous on social media and just in our lives, in our fast-paced lifestyle, is FOMO. I think FOMO, the fear of missing out, is just such a big problem. And that goes to what you're saying. Like, if we take the time to process something, to meditate on it and to think through it and to formulate our own content, that takes time. And while we're taking that time, the world, the trends, the social media platforms are moving on without us. That's how we feel. And so it encourages us into that shallow reading of the word, that shallow experience with God, and that shallow sort of looking for shallow things to post and to get likes, as you said, rather than actually doing the work, both personal work and, you know, whatever other work that needs to happen to make good quality, high quality content.
Yeah.
And that's why the community aspect of social media is probably more important, because, you know, chatting regularly with people on their Messenger or WhatsApp, something like that, you know, staying in touch with groups that you can fellowship with, that gives you an opportunity to just share life and to chat and to check in with people and see how they're going. That's important. That's hugely important, as you said, with helping people and discipling people and mentoring people and being mentored and discipled and helped yourself in the times when you need it. And I think a big broader part or problem with social media is definitely that FOMO aspect.
Yeah, for sure. And that's also a double-edged sword as well, because yeah, to be relevant, you do need to be up in the trends. I mean, especially we see this so clearly with Reels. Like, there's the songs that become trendy, and then there's the dances that become trendy, and like the trends that are trendy. And so there are a lot of Christians that I see in that space, but they're not necessarily the ones that are the most theologically, I don't want to say grounded. I think a lot of them are, but like they don't share their theology very much. They're kind of more wishy-washy, like, I don't know, feel good kind of Christianity. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think because social media is such a quick scroll thing. It's like if you're driving down a highway and you see a billboard, like you've only got time to read like 3 or 4 words. So you're not looking for something really, like if it's a Coca-Cola ad, you're not looking for the ingredients list on a billboard, right? You're looking for the logo and something nice, and you're going to keep driving. Same with social media. Like you've got about 2 seconds to see a post. So I get it, but yeah, it's tricky because it's not always a space for, I guess, educated discussion. It doesn't necessarily encourage that, is what I'm trying to say. But oh well, I guess that's why Record exists, hopefully. Magazines
maybe we can
and books
create those. Yeah, maybe we can all create those spaces and make it better. Enhance the quality of that conversation. So, what are some tips, Mary Ellen? How can we strengthen our individual and our church's social media presences? How can we do that, like we've been saying, in a meaningful way rather than just in a shallow sort of space?
Yeah, well, I guess we're not going to be talking theology necessarily. That's not really where I was going. I wasn't saying that's what we have to do. But what I see more and more in the digital space is that individuals are getting a lot more traction than organizations. I think, you know, go back 50 years and the church organization was this glorified thing. It's like, wow, this is so amazing. We're doing so much mission work around the world. Like there was a lot, I think maybe a lot more awareness of what the church was doing. And I'm not saying that we're irrelevant at all now. Like the fact that we have so much mission work going on around the world is an incredible thing. However, there is an increasing distrust between the general public and church institutions, or like any institution, politics, social stuff, anything. And so when I see like the most impressive Christian influencers online, they're all individuals that are just sharing their life and their testimony and their story. So I guess like the practical takeaway from that is like, what are you already doing? Whether you already have a social media presence, or what do you already do day to day that you can document in a not really difficult way. Like maybe, Jared, you could take, you know, snippets from your articles that you already write, or, you know, take photos of what's happening in your life, life with a toddler in lockdown. There's just different things that you could do. And then you bring Jesus into that. You're not just a writer. You're not just a father. You're like a Christian as well. And so that is, I think, the future of evangelism, or the now. It's not the future. It's the now of evangelism. And if there's an institution maybe watching this, or an institution representative, try and bring your personality. That's kind of why we do these record lives as well, because it breaks down that barrier of, I guess, maybe distrust, and it brings people to the forefront. But yeah, that's what I would say. But what other tips would you give, Jared, in that space?
I think one thing that shuts down conversation really quickly is absolutism or negativity. If you're having a conversation about something faith related, what you want is people to ask questions and to want to know more, to trust you. We talked a lot in our presentations on Sabbath about, I guess, building trust as being an important part of your social media brand or your social media outreach. And I think, if we're too, this is a tricky one for Adventists, because we believe we have a special message, a special prophetic voice that we're expressing and explaining to the world. And I don't disagree with that. I think that's important, and I think it's necessary. The world needs that prophetic voice. We need the three angels message. And the Revelation and Daniel are great, and the gospel, the everlasting gospel that we preach. All of those things are important. But if we come in suggesting that we're the only ones, or I as an individual have it right and your version of that is wrong, that's going to shut down conversation very quickly and turn a lot of people away. So yeah, there may be a point where you have to do that with someone, but you should do that with someone who is much further along the journey than doing that immediately. So I think one thing we can do is not appear online like aggressive, argumentative know-it-alls who have all the answers. If we take our time to build relationships, if we share ideas and go into places and share our Adventist ideas, but not in a confrontational way or an aggressive sort of we're the only ones with the truth way, more like giving people the opportunity to respond as God does to us. I truly believe that the character of God is love, and what that means is he gives us free will, and it allows us to get ourselves into trouble. It allows us to make mistakes. It allows our theology to be wrong sometimes, but he still loves us, and he takes us on that journey of improving all of those things. And so if we truly represent the character of Christ online, we shouldn't be getting into arguments that no one will win. We should be trying to have that whole approach that I think it's Proverbs 15 where Solomon says a soft answer turns away wrath, or turns away anger. If you give a soft answer online, if you're listening more than preaching at people, some of those tips can be really impactful when someone is looking for help, someone is looking for God. There's a title of a book, I think, by Chris Blake called Searching for a God to Love. It's a really nice thing or phrasing. I like it. But there's a lot of people out there that are searching for anyone to love them, or any God who is love. And God, our God, I believe, is the best representation of that. And we have a very good understanding of that. But people aren't going to come to you and trust you to hear your version of that if they're struggling. When they're not struggling, when you're not struggling, you're just out there beating them over the head with your understanding of things. I just think, we need to be mindful, and we need to be careful in our witness, not to be aggressive and turn people off online, because it's very easy to fall into that trap, like online. Oh, I don't like what that person's saying. They're in error. This is terrible. It was amusing. People on Twitter were attacking this billboard that someone had put up. And there's a group in America that put up this billboard. It's got an eagle in the corner with the American flag. It's this Christian nationalism thing. And it's got big, you'll hate it as a designer, Mary Ellen, Comic Sans font.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
it says one nation under God, Genesis 1:1. So there's a lot of problems with that billboard. First of all, that is not what Genesis 1:1 says at all. Second of all, you should never use Comic Sans on a billboard. Yeah, there's a whole lot of problems. But I'm just and I'm not saying that people shouldn't laugh at that and criticize that, because yeah, there's a lot of error in that space. But when someone genuinely, an individual comes along and they have a misconception or a different idea of something than you do, you can't jump on, when someone puts up a billboard, an organization, that might be fair game. But when people see you being critical or cynical all the time, or sarcastic all the time online, like that's your persona, they see where you're commenting. If you're friends with someone, you see what they're liking, retweeting, saying, posting, sharing. You build yourself a bit of a reputation, and then people find you as an unsafe person. They're not going to come to you when they have a serious theological question or a serious life problem that they need help with. They're not going to come to you. So are you establishing yourself as a safe space online where people can actually grow?
There's that quote, what is it? Is it better to be right but love others, or to love others but be wrong, or whatever? And sometimes it's actually better just to be, wrong, to not share the truth for the sake of saving a relationship. Yeah, it reminds me what you were saying, Jared, of this quote that I once heard. Hopefully I won't butcher it as much as that one, but it's basically that you will never convert someone by answering questions that they're not asking. And I think so many Christians, the way that we do evangelism, and I'm so guilty of this, I've done this so often, is like reading into what people are saying and then trying to twist it to fit into some theological discussion and convert them that way. It's like if someone, oh, my grandma just died, oh, I'm so sad. Oh, well, do you know actually that we don't believe, we have a different view of the state of the dead, and then just like talking about stuff that actually in that moment they don't need to hear. But it's a much more effective witness. Obviously this isn't a blanket statement, the Holy Spirit can guide you in this, but often it's so much more effective to just sit back, share your story, or just listen, or, just don't try to correct people and to give them answers that they're not looking for. And I think this also came across in what we were sharing on Saturday as well in the Students Association of Fiji. The focus on meeting a need and really knowing what your purpose is on social media before you create anything, because purposeless creation is A, a waste of time, B, can just lead to this kind of antagonistic stuff that you're talking about, and C, it'll just get lost in cyberspace. There's no point. But if you can clearly identify a need that you can meet in the digital space, and this can be a bit meta, because it's not like you're feeding people, you're not clothing people, there's no physical ability to do that via the internet, right? But there are so many needs that people have, whether that's connection, or whether that's self-esteem, or whether that's, there's a lot of things that you could minister to. And if you can find your niche before you start making content, that can really help, I guess, your ministry's reach online. But
yeah, I guess that feeds into just in general, not even on social media. We need to know our God-given purpose, and what am I shaped to do? What am I set up in my life? What are my experiences, my talents, my interests? What do they equip me in a special way to do that no one else can do? And there might be others that can do it, but no one in my circle or my sphere of influence, no one with my unique perspective on that, and using that, finding that, or tapping into that, whether it's on social media or just in your life, whether it's your career or whether it's on the side, the hobbies that you engage in, and the tent making ministry like Paul had. We need to be figuring that out. We need to be finding a purpose for ourselves and a mission for our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess everything comes back to that, really, doesn't it? Every action we make, especially in the ministry space. So, yeah, I guess the take home for today is A, analyze your social media usage. Hopefully you're not on it as much as I am. It's quite shameful, actually. And then, yeah, maybe take some moments to figure out what your God-given talents are and what you can contribute to the digital space and how you can do that as well. Again, if you would like more in-depth analysis, discussion on this topic, we have presentations we can share with you. We've got a lot of experience. We're not experts, but we are Christian content creators, so always willing to chat about this stuff. But yeah, I guess, is there a take home for you, Jared?
You've thrown me, Mary Ellen. I just got when you said you weren't experts, I thought of the corny dad joke. Do you know what an expert is, Mary Ellen?
I don't. What is it?
A drip under pressure.
A drip?
Because it's an expert. So that was my take home for the day. That's what I was thinking of. It's been a long week, so my mind is easily distracted. The take home for me is, I think what I said last, finding our purpose and using that in every space of the life. You know, I do a lot of writing and creation for my work. I'm on social media and the internet, etc. Sometimes when I'm not, I just switch off, and I'm very bad at using social media full stop, like to minister or just to interact and engage. Compared to my wife, she's really good at making connections, building relationships, you know, sharing updates. I'm just like hardly ever there. And if I am there, I'm just sort of stalking, shady in the background, just looking at what other people are doing, catching up on the goss. And so I think that's a challenge to all of us. How do we use every space that we're in? How do we reclaim that space? And how do we shine a light for God in the spaces that we find ourselves in? How do we be that city on a hill, you know, that the Gospels talk about? So yeah, that's a take home for me. Can I this week be more intentional in my life about living out my purpose and sharing God with others, even if we're locked down?
Well, especially if we're locked down, actually, because you've got more time, hopefully.
Can't go anywhere else.
To reflect. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. So to everyone watching who is in lockdown, our thoughts are with you. We empathize, and for those who aren't, enjoy the freedom. We hope that you are thriving and enjoying wherever you are at. We'll be back next week with another episode of Record Life, as always. But thank you so much for joining us today. To all the regulars, we really appreciate you and your comments. And to the visitors, we hope you return next week. Anyway, we will see you. We'll see you then. God bless.
Bye.